Hello everyone, this is Rig. Welcome to an episode where we will discuss about the decline of Mughal Empire in India. So this is like the beginning of modern period in India, and that starts with the decline of the most influential Islamic dynasty in the Indian subcontinent. So the Mughals ruled for approximately 200 years from 1526 to 1707 AD. And after that, there were a series of Mughal rulers who were not at all efficient, and that led to the inglorious end of the most influential Islamic dynasty in India. So, we will go through the causes of the decline and we will discuss them in great detail. This end part of this video contains question and answers, so please go through it. It will help you in your exams. Also carry a notebook with you when you see these videos so that you can note down the important points. So without doing any delay, let's begin. The decline of Mughal period in India. So, introduction. How did the Mughal period decline? So, the beginning of decline happened in late 17th and early 18th century. This was the time period when the Mughal dynasty began to decline. Why did it start? The period of weakness began after the death of Aurangzeb. So there were six major Mughal rulers: Babur, Humayun, Akbar, then came Jahangir, Shah Jahan, and Aurangzeb. So with the death of Aurangzeb in 1707, the great Mughals ended, and then came the later Mughals who were not at all efficient. Decentralization begins. The central authority of the Mughal emperors weakened, and the empire began to break up into independent and semi independent states. So the central control became weak, and as you can guess, when the central controls become weak, that time all the local rulers become their own boss, and so they declared themselves to be independent. This period witnessed the rise of British as a major territorial conqueror. So this was also a time when Britishers were rising as the conquerors of the Indian subcontinent. The Mughal Empire gradually lost control over many of its provinces. So one by one, all the provinces which were being governed under the Mughal Empire for the last 170 or 200 years became independent. The emperors who ruled after Aurangzeb are referred to as the later Mughals. So the people who ruled after Aurangzeb, they were not at all powerful, and so that we can differentiate them from the actual powerful Mughal rulers, we call those emperors as the later Mughals. Bahadur Shah I became the first of the later Mughals and ascended the throne on 1707 CE at the age of 65. So Bahadur Shah I was the successor and son of Aurangzeb, who became the emperor at the age of 65 after the death of Aurangzeb in 1707. The later Mughals ruled for short periods and were mostly puppets. So decline happened rapidly under the later Mughals because they did not have any such power. Now we will go through a list of later Mughals. So Bahadur Shah was the first of the later Mughals. He ruled for like 5 years, 1707 to 1712 CE. Bahadur Shah I was the first of the later Mughals. It is said that he was a very efficient ruler, but when he became emperor, he was already very old at the age of 65. So he couldn't do much to help restore the state of Mughal dynasty. Jahandar Shah came after Bahadur Shah and ruled for 1 year. He ruled for a brief period after Bahadur Shah I. Then came Farooq Sher, who was comparatively a stronger ruler than Jahandar Shah, and he ruled from 1713 to 1719. Then came Muhammad Shah. He ruled for more than 3 decades, for almost 3 decades, and It was during his time that foreign invasions like that of Nadir Shah happened, and that exposed the weakness of the Mughal dynasty to the whole of India. Ahmed Shah came after Muhammad Shah, and he was not at all a very strong ruler. So Alamgir too followed Ahmed Shah and ruled until 1759 CE. Shah Alam too was one of the ruler who ruled for the longest at the time of later Mughals, but he lost the Battle of Boxer with the Britishers, and as a penalty, he was forced to give the Diwani rights of Bengal, means tax collection rights from Bengal was handed over to the British under Shah Alam II. Akbar too had very little real power. Then came Bahadur Shah Jafar. He was the last of the Mughal emperor, and it was during his time that revolt of 1857 happened, and he was deported to Rangoon, where he died out of old age. So reasons for the decline. Politics in the Mughal court. So one by one we will see why did the Mughal empire decline. So first reason is politics in Mughal court. So there were groups in Mughal court, and those groups were Iranis and Turanis. So Iranis came from Persia and Turanis came from Transoxania. So these were outsiders who had huge influence in Mughal court. Then came Afghans and the Sheikhzadas. Afghans came from the mountainous regions across river Indus, which is Afghanistan, the northern and central portion of Afghanistan, and Sheikhzadas were Indian Muslims. So there was a huge division in court, and Mughal court always was a place for debate and power struggle between these four groups. There was mutual jealousy also. These groups were suspicious and jealous of each other. And so there was a constant power struggle. Now, this led to the harm of administration because all the groups were fighting for power rather than seeing for the welfare of people. The prestige and authority of the Mughal Empire declined due to internal strife. So they did not trust or they did not believe the emperor to be the authority, and so there was no demand or no personality of the Mughal emperor. Reasons for decline: weak military and administration. So how did the military become weak, and how did that lead to weak administration also? So Akbar's military system. Akbar was one of the greatest Mughal rulers. So Akbar had created a strong military organization under the Mansabdari system. So what was the Mansabdari system? Imagine the empire being divided into many small segments like constituencies. So one Mansabdar will be placed in charge of one area. And what would he do? This Mansabdar would maintain a certain amount of soldiers or troops within his area, and he would pay for those troops from the income that he would get by tax collection from that area. So this was the Mansabdari system. So each Mansabdar was given responsibility of maintaining troops. It may be 5,000 troops or 10,000 troops, depending on how much you earn from that area. So Mansabdars had to maintain a fixed number of troops and were paid with Jaigirs. So this area, Mansabdars did not receive money. They were paid Jaigirs. This area on which he governed. So that area was the Jaigir of the Mansabdar. This system started to break down towards the end of 17th century. So this very perfect system which was made by Akbar was in a declining state in around 17th century. Increase in Mansabdars. And why did it decline? Because emperor granted Mansabdari to every individual in the court. So there were many Mansabdars, but the Jaigir or the area was limited. So the number of Mansabdars increased greatly during Aurangzeb's period. And More Mansabdars meant fewer Jagirs, and that led to corruption and inefficiency. Corruption, like when the Mansabdars were given responsibility of maintaining 10,000 troops, then what did the Mansabdar do at the time of Aurangzeb? All later periods, they maintain only like 2,000 or 3,000 troops, and in paper they showed I am maintaining 5,000 or 10,000 troops, and they used to take that money or keep that money for himself. So this led to the decline of military power. So there was a neglect of troop quotas. Mansabdars did not maintain their quota of troops and used very corrupt methods, and so there was a decline of military strength. The Mughal army failed to modernize its warfare and equipment. Now, with the progress in technology, the equipments of warfare also became more advanced. However, the Mughals were using equipments which were more than a century old. Nothing was done to reform, modernize, or strengthen the army. So, army was not used to the modern system of warfare. Now we will see how Aurangzeb's policies led to the decline of the Mughal Empire. So there was a reversal of policies. Aurangzeb reversed Akbar's policy of diplomacy and religious tolerance. So it was believed that Akbar was a religiously tolerant ruler. We don't know how much of it is true because modern researchers show that Akbar was not at all a religiously tolerant ruler. However, let's not get into those modern debates, but according to syllabus, it is told that Akbar was a moderately tolerant ruler, but Aurangzeb was a staunch Islamic emperor. So he failed to realize that unity and support of people was crucial for a vast empire. So he failed to realize the fact that as 70 to 80% of the Indian population was actually Hindu population. So without the support of Hindu, it is impossible to rule over India. Aurangzeb forgot this. His policy of religious intolerance shook the foundations of the empire. And so the people who were believing in the Mughal administration for hundreds of years, they turned their back to the Mughal emperor. Numerous wars were fought with Sikhs, Marathas, Jats, and Rajputs. So Sikhs did not pose any such problem to the Mughal emperor, but Aurangzeb, because of some unknown reason, was very cruel and he killed the Sikh guru who was the religious head of the Sikh, and that led to growing dissent among the Sikhs for the Mughal against the Mughal empire. And the Marathas, great leaders like Chhatrapati Shivaji Maharaj, was not given the respect that he deserves, and so he fought for his independence. His son Chhatrapati Shambhaji Maharaj was was killed in a very cruel manner, and that led to the growth of dissent among the Marathas against the Mughal Empire. The Jats and the Rajputs were very much, many sections of the Rajputs were very much loyal to the Mughal emperor ever since the time of Akbar. But Aurangzeb's policy of Islamic conservativeness turned the Rajputs also against the Mughal empire. So, loss of Rajput support. Rajputs, once loyal allies, became bitter enemies under Aurangzeb. The Deccan campaign was very costly, long drawn, and ruinous. So, Deccan campaign, this campaign was made as a result of the as a result of fight for independence by Chhatrapati Shivaji Maharaj. So this great ruler Chhatrapati Shivaji Maharaj thought that I will make my own kingdom where everyone will live peacefully away from the corrupt policies of Aurangzeb. And so he fought for independence. Even though he fought brilliantly, still he couldn't see the glorious end of his life. He died at a very young age, which was unfortunate. But Aurangzeb, what happened? He had to stay in Deccan in order to deal with the Marathas, especially deal with Chhatrapati Shivaji and Chhatrapati Shambhaji Maharaj. And so it was a long drawn conflict, and Aurangzeb drained the resources of the Mughal Empire. His policies directly contributed to the weakening of the Mughal Empire. So thus Aurangzeb's policies contributed to Mughal Empire being weak. Wars of succession. How did the succession happened in the Mughal dynasty? So there was no definite law that who will become emperor after the present emperor dies. There was no definite law, and so all the sons or important relatives of the emperor used to fight with each other in order to gain right over the throne. These civil wars were very destructive and very expensive, and they also cost a lot of money and material resources. So the empire used to drain out of wealth. Wars of succession caused frequent political upheavals. So this was a political tension always going on in the Mughal dynasty. The empire became weak and unstable due to internal conflicts. So outside attack can be dealt with, but what if the internal people are always fighting with each other? Then the empire is bound to decline. Struggles often led to unworthy successors taking power. So sometimes unworthy people who does not have any quality of becoming a ruler became kings or emperors of the Mughal dynasty. Then there was Jagirdari crisis. As we have discussed the Mansabdari system, we will discuss what we will discuss now in further depth. How did that system led to Jagirdari crisis? So there was shortage of Jaigir because Aurangzeb declared Mansabdari to everyone. He used to grant Mansabdari to everyone. Nobles envied and competed with each other for most profitable Jaigis. So few Jaigis used to generate a lot of agricultural wealth, and so the nobles competed with each other, and there was a system of buttering the emperor in order to get profitable Jaigirs. Mughal officers were given Jaigirs as payment for their services. So this system was not there. It was not a form of payment, it was a form of responsibility, but from the time of Aurangzeb it became a form of payment. So towards the end of 17th century there were very few Jaigirs left, and so what the emperor did, he did something disastrous. That is, the personal property of the emperor was converted into Jaigirs to satisfy the new officers. So nobles, to satisfy the greed of the nobles, personal property of the emperor was given away as Jaigirs. This caused revenue loss for the royal treasury and weakened the emperor's power. So royal treasury was draining a lot because crown property was being converted into Jaigirs. Jagirdars knew that Jaigirs were temporary, so they extracted maximum revenue from the peasants. So these Jagirdars, they knew very well that they are in charge of that particular Jaigir only for a very short period of time. So they did nothing for welfare. Their only motive was to extract as much resource as possible from the peasants. This left very little or no income for peasants, worsening their condition. So the peasants were extracted or exploited for wealth, and their situation was in a very bad state, and thus there was violent uprisings against the Mughal Empire on behalf of the peasants. Then there was economic bankruptcy. How was the economic bankruptcy? There was drain of treasury. A major cause for the disintegration of Mughal Empire was its economic bankruptcy. So the Mughal Empire was draining out of its resources in such a rapid rate that at one point of time it had almost no money. Then there was lavish spending. The emperor used to spend a lot of money for his pleasure, and that led to the decline of the resource of Mughal dynasty. And they built magnificent monuments like the Taj Mahal and different other things only for entertainment or for the pleasure of the emperor. So that led to the drainage of resources. There was revenue decline. The heavy expenditure drained the royal treasury significantly. So revenue was not being generated at all. Aurangzeb's Deccan campaign was a financial disaster. So, as I have discussed before, that in order to deal with Chhatrapati Shivaji Maharaj and Chhatrapati Sambhaji Maharaj, Aurangzeb had to spend a lot of time and a lot of resources in the Deccan, which was a financial disaster, and thus collapse was inevitable because of the Deccan campaign. So Shivaji was actually successful in draining the Mughal Empire out of its resources, which led to a rapid decline of the Mughal Empire. So shortage of Jagirs and excessive military expenses worsened the fiscal conditions. So finance was in a very bad state. Corruption and extraction, revenue extraction methods under Jagidas left very little for royal treasury, because the Jagidas or the Mansabdas, they themselves was consuming most of the profit, and that led to economic weakness. Then there were foreign invasions. What kind of foreign invasions was there? Nadir Shah's invasions of 1739. So Nadir Shah was a Persian ruler who invaded India in 1739 and exposed the weakness of the Mughals. The Mughal Emperor Muhammad Shah literally couldn't do anything when Nadir Shah came. He just surrendered totally. The population of Delhi was massacred, and all kinds of wealth which was there in the Mughal treasury, even the silverware and the dinner plates, they were also looted by Nadir Shah. So he plundered Delhi and looted immense treasures, including the Kohinoor diamond and the Peacock throne. So massive loot. According to contemporary observer, the loot included 60 lakhs of rupees, thousands of gold coins, and nearly 1 crore worth of gold ware, and 50 crore worth of jewels. Now adjust all these amounts to the financial condition today. You will see that billions and millions of rupees were taken away by Nadir Shah, along with priceless resources like the Kohinoor diamond and the Peacock throne. Then came the invasion of Ahmed Shah Abdali. He was the ruler of Afghanistan, and he repeatedly invaded North India between 1748 and 1761. In 1761, the last battle was fought between Ahmed Shah Abdali and the Marathas. It seems to have been a draw because Ahmed Shah Abdali never came to India after that. These invasions shattered the power and prestige of the Mughal Empire. So, up until now, people used to believe that Mughals are very powerful, but the common people of India also understood that Mughals have become useless and worthless. Provincial governors took advantage of the weak central government and declared independence. So these provincial governments now became independent. These invasions significantly contributed to the breakup and collapse of the empire. Then there were weak successors. So no strong ruler was there after Aurangzeb. Even Aurangzeb himself was not also a very strong ruler. So a major reason for the decline and lack of worthy and competent successors to Aurangzeb. Aurangzeb ruled over a vast empire with an iron hand, and that led to intolerance. So his descendants were very weak. Their whole focus was on pleasure, and they were inefficient. Many were addicted to harmful drugs and were alcoholic, severely alcoholic. So they became mere puppets in the hands of ambitious and powerful nobles. So these nobles, they were the ones who were actually controlling the Mughal Empire, and the emperor was actually a puppet. Due to lack of strong leadership, the central authority weakened further. Then there was frequent changes in power. No emperor lasted for the average duration was like only 10 years, and all the time there was constant fear that emperor will be changed, someone else will kill the emperor and take over. So this led to a crisis and weakened the administration. Local rulers also became independent, which dismantled the unity during the time of the Mughals. So, advantage taken by Britishers. Now, this is the last point we will discuss, where we will see how the Britishers exploited the situation of India during the time of later Mughals. So, the Mughal Empire had lasted for 3 centuries. Its decline in early 18th century led to intense rivalry among ambitious power, and one such ambitious power was the Britisher. So Britishers took full advantage of the weakening empire to establish control over India. So they took full advantage of the weak central authority of the Mughals, and thus they could take control over India. And that started with the Battle of Plassey in 1757, where the richest province in India, that is the Bengal province, went under the Britishers. Bahadur Shah Jafar led the 1757 revolt against the British but was defeated. So Bahadur Shah Jafar somehow in his old age was was able to give a final try to re-establish the Mughal dynasty but was defeated in the revolt of 1857, and as a result he was exiled to Rangoon, which is currently in Myanmar, and he died there. His two sons were killed in front of him. So British victory marked the beginning of modern period in Indian history, and with that started 200 years of British rule in India. So now we will go through the questions and answers which will help you in your exams. How were Aurangzeb's policies responsible for the decline of the Mughal Empire? Aurangzeb reversed Akbar's policies of diplomacy and religious tolerance. He failed to realize that the progress and stability of such a vast empire depended on support and unity of the people. His policy of religious intolerance shook the foundations of the empire. It led to numerous wars with the Sikhs, the Marathas, the Jats, and the Rajputs. Loss of support of the loyal Rajputs, who had earlier contributed greatly to the stability of the Mughal Empire but now became bitter foes. The costly, long drawn, and ruinous Deccan campaign. Name the four groups of nobles in the Mughal court. The four groups of nobles in the Mughal court were Iranis from Persia, Turanis from Transoxania, Afghans from the mountainous border regions across the river Indus, Sheikhzadas consisting of Indian Muslims. What weakness of Mughal army led to the loss of military strength towards the end of 17th century? Towards the end of 17th century, the Mansabdari system began to break down. There was an increase in the number of Mansabdars and a shortage of Jagirs. Mansabdars did not maintain their quota of troops and adopted corrupt methods. The Mughal army failed to keep pace with the time. They had no navy and made no efforts to establish one. Their equipment and techniques of warfare were obsolete and ineffective. Nothing was done to reform, modernize, and strengthen the army. How did the War of Succession affect the Mughal Empire? There was no definite law of succession to the Mughal throne. The death of a ruler led to wars of succession among rival claimants. These civil wars were very costly and destructive. They drained the resources of the empire. These caused frequent political upheavals. The empire became unstable and weak. What was the result of the foreign invasions during the time of the later Mughals? The invasions of Nadir Shah and Ahmed Shah Abdali shattered the power and prestige of the Mughals. Nadir Shah looted and plundered Delhi in 1739 and carried away the Peacock Throne and the Kohinoor Diamond. Ahmad Shah Abdali repeatedly invaded northern India between 1748 and 1761 CE. These invasions exposed the weakness of the Mughals and resulted in further weakening of the empire. The provincial governors took advantage and set up independent kingdoms. This led to the breakup and collapse of the empire. To what extent were Aurangzeb's successors responsible for the disintegration of the Mughal Empire? Aurangzeb's successors were weak and inefficient. They were pleasure loving and puppets in the hands of powerful nobles. They lacked the ability to control a vast empire. This resulted in the rise of independent and semi independent states. The central authority weakened. The British also took advantage of this weakness and began their plan to establish control over India. Bahadur Shah Jafar led the 1857 revolt but was defeated and exiled. The Mughal Empire came to an inglorious end. So that was all about the decline of the Mughal Empire. Here we have discussed several reasons because of which the most influential Islamic dynasty in medieval India was gone. So we have discussed reasons like weak policies of Aurangzeb's weak successors. How did the wars of succession help in contributing to the rapid decline of Mughal Empire, and ultimately how the Britishers took over India by exploiting the situation of the weak central authority. So that was all for today. Please support me so that I can bring brighter contents in future. Thank you.